So what I'm going to do today is share some work that I've done at the Open University, which is directly teaching veganism to the public via distance learning, I suppose. So I mentioned some of this in the talk I gave in Kent this summer, which some of you would have seen, but not all of you, of course. So for those who did see that, apologies for any repetition. But rather than talk about this teaching resource, I wanted to actually share it with you and kind of go through it with you. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, that's confusing.
That one.
That one. Okay. Thanks, Kate. Share.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not familiar with Zoom, as you've probably gathered already. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Open Learn Veganism Interactive. Can you give me a thumbs up? Well, yeah, great. Thanks, Zoe. Brilliant. So Open Learn is a free open learning platform produced and hosted by the Open University. But this is for anyone in the world to access. You don't need a login. You don't need to be an Open University student. Just anyone at all can access it. As you can see in the top right, you can create an account if you wish, which is free. And that means you can study courses on Open Learn and get certificates of participation and that kind of thing. But you don't need that to actually do the courses on the platform. So this is one that I created with colleagues at the OU a few months ago, Veganism Interactive. And as you can say, it's capitalizing on this this cultural moment of veganism becoming more prominent. And apologies, I'm getting over a cold, by the way. Apologies for my cough and so on. And what I'm trying to do with this interactive is take the focus away from the culture wars, I suppose, and away from this individualization of the way veganism is discussed, perceived, stereotyped. So rather than being this sort of clash, this interpersonal clash around, the preachy vegan stereotype and the defensive omnivore stereotype, I wanted to focus on what are the social structures underpinning what veganism is opposed to, i.e. speciesism in shorthand, and how does veganism respond to those social structures? So trying to get learners to focus on what is this context in which we find ourselves in relation to non-human animals, and what might we do about that context? What might we do about social structures to advance things, rather than thinking about what are my responsibilities as an individual, or what are my feelings as an individual, what are my biographical experiences. Obviously, we hope that people will make those connections, and personal change might be part of that as well. But that's not what the focus of the teaching is about. And as you can see, this is embedded in a range of other stuff that I produce for Open Learn. Most of this is based on work I've done with Kate. So these are kind of, again, public-facing versions of academic publications that we've written by and large, but I won't talk about those now. So if we start the interactive, so it starts off with speciesism rather than veganism. It's starting with the problem before we get to the solution. That's the basic structure. So it's just posing these very simple questions about why do we treat some species differently to others, and just saying, that's weird, isn't it? Why might that be? Let me start off with this very simple quiz. I'll answer with the sort of, conventional speciesist answers, if you like. Do you consider pigs as a food source? Let's go for yes. Submit your answer. Do you consider horses a food source? Let's go for no. And when the learner submits their answer, you get these results. So even though maybe a lot of already vegan or vegan curious people perhaps have been taking the course, you can still see that there's a big difference there. People are much more likely to say no for horses than they are for pigs. So that sets up a clear graphical representation of this difference. Why does this happen? In order to understand that, we need to understand speciesism. So this is the way that people are invited in. So we have a brief definition of speciesism. I just wanted to highlight here social structure. So this is what, again, I'm focusing on in this interactive course, getting people to think about things in terms of social structures rather than in terms of beliefs or individual prejudice, discrimination, that sort of way of looking at speciesism. And the way we encourage people to do that is through this video, which I got to play a bit of in Kemp. I don't want to play the whole thing now, so I'm going to shut up and let you enjoy this.
Species is a strange sounding term. So, the prejudice caused by institutions, patterns of social behavior, and cultural beliefs. Speciesist ideas, such as the belief that other animals don't feel pain or don't have complex emotions, are often used to justify or excuse harming other animals. Speciesist ideas are also behind the belief that humans are exceptional and that human interests are the only interests that really matter. So how have we learned to accept speciesism? This happens in two ways. Firstly, by categorizing animals according to how we use. These categories differ in terms of the extent to which we treat other animals as objects or things versus treating them as subjects or people. That is, creatures with thoughts, feelings, who have preferences, such as wanting to avoid being harmed. A neat way to think about this is to consider whether another animal is thought of as someone or something. Secondly, it works by making animals more or less visible to us. In a nutshell, the animals humans treat relatively well and the objects we make from animals are more visible in society, but the living animals humans harm are less visible. It's not only that we don't see their harmful experiences, but also that we don't hear them or become aware of their experiences in any other way. Putting together the two concepts we just looked at, we can map out the results. This helps us to visualize how animals that humans most usually are treated the most like objects, and the ones we also pay the least attention to. Speciesism takes attention away from animals who are the most exploited, for example, animals confined on factory farms, and directs attention towards those who are least exploited, and in some cases, completely fictional animals, such as cartoon animal characters. We can simplify this map to make it easier to see how speciesism boils down to categorizing other animals in four ways. 1. Those who are cared for and loved as friends. 2. Those who are treated as part of nature, who may be admired from afar, but who may also be ignored and made to see beyond our responsibility, even though human activities can harm them. 3. Those who are treated as things, which includes any animals consumed as food or products, but also the real or fictional animals who are made into objects of entertainment. 4. And finally, those who humans confine and kill, often to produce things. Make no mistake that some animals are put into more than one category, depending on the uses that humans make of them. So, in conclusion, speciesism works by drawing attention away from animals who are most exploited and who suffer the most because of human actions, and towards animals who are already relatively safe from harm. To find out more about speciesism, head over to OpenLearn on www.open.
Let's stop sharing.
What?
Oh no, you're staying on it. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so for any of you who's familiar with my work with Kate at all, hopefully you recognise that was very much based on our stuff, especially the book that we wrote together, and converting it for, we hope, a public audience who are not familiar with sociology, not familiar with this topic at all. And as Kate has informed me, some of her own students, undergrad students, found it very useful as well as a way of kind of making sense of our written work, which doesn't say a lot for our written work maybe, but I think it does show that it has use for undergraduate teaching as well. Okay, so that's that. So that's setting up the problem and then veganism as the solution. So if I've got time, I want to play this video as well. So I'll shut up again.
Whether or not you are vegan or know any vegan personally, you've probably noticed veganism becoming more prominent. Labels, the news, or being a topic of discussion among family, friends, or colleagues. You may have also noticed that the topic of veganism often raises strong opinions, stimulating heated debates on social media or in comments pages under online newspaper stories about veganism. Sometimes in these debates, things can get personal, with the historical roots of veganism and the motivating ideas behind it getting buried. So, let's do a bit of digging. Many people across the world have sought ways to live without harming or exploiting other animals for centuries, long before the word vegan was thought up. But these basic ideas underpinning veganism lacked a word that summed up and concisely communicated these ideas. The first people to call themselves vegetarians in Britain in the early 1800s were what we would now understand as vegan. Not only did they eat a plant-based diet, but they also sought to avoid other ways of using animals that were commonplace at the time, such as transport or agricultural work. But after over 100 years of vegetarianism, the term had a more limited association with avoiding eating meat, including within the British Vegetarian Society. Some of the society members were unhappy with this limited scope of vegetarianism. The new group needed a new word to differentiate themselves from vegetarianism. It was in this context that a young couple closely involved with this new group, Donald Watson and Dorothy Morgan, on a night out in the early 1940s at the Palais des Dames in Leicester, came up with the word vegan. Equipped with the new term, the new group formed the Vegan Society in 1944. While the ideas behind veganism have a long history, veganism was first defined by an early member of the Vegan Society, Leslie Cross, and was adopted as the Vegan Society's official definition in 1951. The word veganism shall mean the doctrine that man should live without exploiting animals. One of the key tasks that this new society set out to achieve was to uncover all the hidden ways that other animals were being exploited, such as investigating animal ingredients in toiletries, cosmetics, medicines, and clothing, as well as in food and drink. To put this into sociological terms, the early pioneers of veganism focused on exposing the extent to which social structures depended on exploiting non-human animals. Veganism is still primarily concerned with ending the exploitation of animals. Paying attention to the harmful consequences of exploitation that veganism highlights can itself be a painful process and experience. But by working towards ending exploitation, there is no longer any need to distract ourselves from these harms, and we can start to recognize all other animals as subjects, different from humans, but no less interested than us in living their own lives.
Okay, so and some of you might have recognized Benjamin Zephaniah's voice providing the narration there, who's a well-known cultural figure in the UK, not sure how much so outside, but very grateful to him for lending his excellent voice to this. So hopefully that makes sense of how this fits together, setting up the problem and the solution in structural terms, and also drawing on some of the work we've done with the Donald Watson archive as well. And just to quickly flag up, students can then go on and investigate in more depth specific topics. So this section builds on the vegophobia work that I spoke about with Karen last year's conference, and that some of you know. So I won't get into that now. But this is the basic idea that I hope you've captured from this quick whiz through this interactive, that is that there are ways to approach teaching veganism that focus on structures, on discourses, rather than on individuals, rather than on blaming or shaming people for their personal practices. And I hope that this is going to be a fruitful way forward. The course has positive reviews so far, which is nice. But I also just want to leave you by saying that this is absolutely free and available for anyone to share and use in your own teaching, in your outreach, in your activism. However you want to use it, please just go ahead. You have absolute carte blanche to do that, and I'll be very grateful if you can share it. There will be more added to this over time. There are more specific topics that I want to add to this current section, and also I'm going to be recording a documentary at a local animal sanctuary, which I hoped I'd have done by now, but I've had a whole bunch of problems this summer that have delayed it. But we've got permission to film, so hopefully we'll be filming that this month, and that will be added to this site in the next few weeks. So I think I'm out of time, so I'll stop there, but thanks for your attention.
You give me a nod when those have appeared.
They have appeared.
They have appeared. Marvellous. I like it when the tech works. So again, some of you may have heard bits about this earlier in the summer, similar to when Matthew was talking about his work, which he presented a couple of times over the summer as well. What I'm going to talk to you about today is an undergraduate module that I deliver at my in my current role at the University of East Anglia. And why are my slides not moving forward? There we go. So this is a final year undergraduate module which runs in the second semester of year 3. So this is right at the end of the undergraduate bachelor's programme on BA Sociology, which is a course that I'm course director for at the UEA. It's based on what a lot of the courses at UEA are, this sort of liberal arts model, that they do a compulsory core set of modules with us in the subject, and then we draw down from a much broader catalogue of modules that are offered across the university. It's not an entirely free choice that they get. We select from across the university, I think from 7 different schools in the university, modules that we think would be appropriate. And likewise, courses across the university use ours as well. So what that means is that students have almost a unique course profile by the time they get to the point, if they've selected this module, by the time they're studying it in their very final semester, they've probably got a unique combination of modules that they've taken. So one of the starting points for this module was to build into the learning outcomes that they would create their own personalised learning outcome, as well as the ones that I specified for the module as well, based on how they'd arrived at the module, what they'd done so far as well. And that's partly, as I say, because of this unique portfolio of modules they've got, partly because it's the very last semester as well. So it's a way in which if they think that there's certain things they really want to do or cover, they're able to address that in some ways in this module. In terms of how it's been kind of planned and what underpins the planning of both the teaching and assessment of this, very much takes a kind of critical pedagogical approach to it. And the basis, I guess, the key points of that approach are about recognizing how important it is that students have both the knowledge and the skills that will enable them to contribute to social justice issues and to engage with those, and that's very consistent with many of these kind of critical pedagogical approaches as well. And that's not just that doesn't just extend to the teaching activities that we have on the module, but it extends to the assessment design as well, which you really can't separate from the two. So the process and the skills that are involved in doing the module and in doing the assessment work means that what on the surface for many students sounds like a really niche module, the kind of vegan sociology module, it connects it to much broader ambitions of critical sociology. And by the end of the module, the students see these things really clearly. We talked yesterday, quite a few people talked about the challenges of the neoliberal university in terms of doing the kinds of work that we do, and this kind of hollowing out of criticality that I think goes along with that really is a challenge in bringing in this sort of approach to our teaching. So what I spent a lot of time thinking about when I was planning this module was finding a way to design something that would fit in that context with that kind of pedagogical approach without kind of abandoning that. So very much when we're working on the module, we're exploring ideas about the things around us, the importance of everyday places and objects and practices, and connecting those to the conceptual issues that I introduce them to in the module. And we also talk a lot in the module as well about small acts of resistance as well. Again, I think there were some conversations about this yesterday in terms of, you know, what is activism and what we should be doing and all of these sorts of stuff. So reinforcing to them the idea that that small everyday acts are important as well. And underpinning all of that is, you know, my sort of firm belief that universities should be sites of resistance. They should be places in which we are encouraging our students to engage in change making. So that very much runs through a lot of the activities that are designed on the module, and the work that they do in their assessments as well. And then I suppose to sort of sweeten the pill in terms of this belonging in the kind of university environment that we have, I use things like the QAA benchmark statements that we have in the UK that give a guide to how what the expectations of what an undergraduate in a particular subject will do or learn through the course of their degree. And this is a selection of some of the items from the benchmark statement for sociology in the UK as well. So connecting what I'm doing to those has been an important part of the design as well. As I said, the module and its assessment are quite closely linked as well. And it had this patchwork assessment set of exercises at its core. So if you're not familiar with patchwork assessment, what happens is that there are a number of kind of specific standalone exercises that students are asked to complete at planned stages throughout the module. So they're independent tasks, but as a whole they link together. There's a sort of plan that runs through them in terms of the development of the module as well. And these are the 4 patches that I gave them on this module. And then these, as well as it then being a learning activity through the course of the module, they also become the focus of their final written assessment, where they write up their reflections and their learning outcomes that these exercises have done as well. So those are the 4 patchworks that I run. And then what I've also done, been collecting, and there was some chat about this yesterday, and this maybe will make sense of it for if any of you were a bit bewildered that when we were talking about these audios. What I've also done is I've contacted lots of people I know in the field and asked them to record a 1-minute answer to those same questions. So after students have written their own patches, they're given some follow-up reflection questions that relate to the task. Those get linked to things like the benchmark statements, and then they also get access to compilations of these 1-minute answers from different vegan studies scholars that have been generous enough to send those to me. And I guess the deal that is offered when I write these begging emails asking people to record these things for me is that then all of those audios have then been shared. So if you send me your answers, you get access to the Dropbox, and I'm hopeful that people will find places to be able to use those audios in their own teaching as well. That's the kind of payback that you get for doing these things, which leads me then.
What does the word vegan?
Oh, hang on. That's, oh, hang on.
My name is Kate Stewart.
I'd forgotten I had the audio embedded in there. That was the start of one of my answers to the first patch question that you heard there. So this leads me onto this invitation, I suppose, as much as anything. There's a screenshot on the right there of the folder structure for the Dropbox that people can access when they've contributed their audios. And one of the reasons that I was really keen to do this and start building this resource was because this kind of collaborative culture that I think has grown, particularly over the 4 years since this conference has been running, helps drive this sort of thing forward. That a lot of us are doing these kinds of things very locally. And we feel like there's not much around us close by where this stuff belongs. So this network of vegan sociologists really helps build the discipline wherever we're working. So that collegiality, the sharing of experience, the sharing of expertise and resources has, for me, been really helpful in developing this kind of teaching. And as I say, the collected audios are available for others to reuse if they've contributed their own. So I think what I would like to kind of invite is that people, if they'd be willing to get involved, to do so. I'll give you some contact details, and anybody wanting to contribute a 1-minute answer and to get access to this resource as well, that would be great to keep growing the thing as well. And then my boasting slide, just to wrap up with, is how well I think this has worked for students and with students in this module, that they see these connections. A lot of the students who took this last year, they had all sorts of different reasons for taking this module, but at least a couple of them said, well, this was just something so outside of anything I knew anything about. I thought, well, I'll give it a go because it's the last semester, know nothing about any of this. And by the end of it, I kind of was apologizing to them because they said, you know what, this is actually just sociology. This is as sociological as anything can get. And I don't know why I didn't see the connection between sociology and the issues that we've covered in this module before. That it really was just absolutely robustly a sociological thing. So really positive feedback from students in terms of both the way of learning and them beginning to see those connections as well, and not just from the students as well. I don't think I've ever had, we all have different processes of how our assessment marking is moderated and the forms that get filled in. I don't think I've ever had a comment like this from a marking moderator before when I've got marking back for an assessment as well. So using this slightly different way of approaching both the assessment and the teaching really has landed terribly well with both students and colleagues. So thank you very much for listening. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour through a lot of the features of that module. If you might be interested in doing some 1-minute answers for me, please do get in touch, and I'll put up some of this material as well on the learning resources that there are on the association's website. That there's a section on teaching resources, and I'll put some stuff up on there as well, and I encourage you to have a look at the stuff that is already there on the website, because as I say, I think the sharing of these kinds of resources is a magnificent thing and has certainly helped me in developing the teaching I've done. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here at this conference today. I'm not a sociologist. I am a PhD in communication, and I am currently serving as a senior teacher here in Lund University in Sweden, based in the strategic communication department. Today, I have one main goal for this presentation. First, I want to show you how I am teaching intersectionality in a critical animal studies context to get feedback in order to improve it for my next edition. I'm very happy of being a part of a team that teaches a module titled Critical Animal Studies, Animals in Society, Culture, and the Media. And this course is offered at Lund University, but within the Department of Communication and Media. Before I dive into my presentation, please know that I'm super eager to hear your thoughts. So I will be incorporating interactive elements to encourage your active participation. And in order to participate, I invite you to join in using Mentimeter. Simply take your phone, scan the QR code displayed on the screen, or visit the URL provided. And this will allow you both to respond to questions and also to view the collective responses from the rest of our audience as I present. And now, to start our discussion, let's begin with a question that I would like you to answer. If you're a teacher, do you incorporate the concept of intersectionality into your higher education teaching? And here you have 3 possible answers: yes, no, or not, but I would like to. If you're a student, you can answer to, of course, whether you receive any education on intersectionality or if you would like to. Please take a moment to share your perspective while I proceed with the next slide. Yeah, so now let me give you some background. This course, this module, which we teach in person and in English language, is all about understanding how animals are seen and treated and portrayed in our society today from a clear critical animal studies perspective. This course has been around 2012, making it Sweden's very first course in critical animal studies. And over the last 10 years, it's drawn international students from very different disciplines. What's neat is that anybody who has finished high school level education can take this course, and it can also fit into a bachelor's or a master's degree program. So that's great. And now it's time for a question aimed at you. And if you answered yes to the previous question, I'm curious to learn more. So specifically for those of you who incorporate the concept of intersectionality into your teaching, or those who are getting some education in intersectionality, could you please share in what subject and which specific course or program you introduced or you got introduced to this concept? And I give you some seconds for you to answer. I hope you can see the question now. Yeah, and while some of you are answering the question, I will go on with my presentation. As I told you before, our students have incredibly diverse backgrounds. They come from different parts of the world and have studied a wide range of subjects and programs. And also some of them are already activists, deeply engaged in animal rights, while others walk into the classroom not knowing quite what to expect. Or just some of them, they just simply want to explore something new. We have even got the question from a student, I think it was last year, must I be a vegan in order to pass this module? And of course, the answer is of course not, but chances are they might consider it. And truth is that some, of course, have changed their relation to other animals. This course eventually grew into this modest platform for further exchanges within the university, which is known as the Lund University Critical Animal Studies Network. And we are not super active, but the network is there. And now comes a new question for you. Yeah, so would you say that students appreciate the intersectionality contents? And now I will go on and explain to you the contents of the course. So during our 12-week spring term, we explore research from a bunch of different areas like sociology, media, philosophy, and gender studies. I personally lead this lecture about intersectionality and total liberation from the perspective of critical animal studies. And I share with my colleague Lina Lindström another one on agency. I lead also a workshop in one of the seminars on how to write a CAS paper. And our course is structured around 5 main themes: an introduction to CAS, a view of social constructions of animals, the lecture of intersectional oppression, language and power, a theme about agency, and finally a lecture on activism. Our course follows a straightforward structure. It kicks off with a lecture the first week, and then the following week, there's a seminar. And these seminars are student-based, and they either dive deeper into the previous lecture's contents or focus on guiding students through their CAS paper, which serves as the main course's examination. To make the course as student-centered as possible, we actively encourage engagement during lectures as well. And initially, I only used oral questions or oral prompts, but I am experimenting introducing interactive elements like here, but actually I give students much more time to answer the questions. And here's the thing, we have students from different cultures. For most of them, English is not their first or even second language, as is it, of course, not either mine. And I want to ensure even the quieter students can participate more comfortably. And providing a few minutes for written contributions has proven to be effective in encouraging subsequent oral discussions within the class. And our lectures and seminars run for 3 hours each, which is quite intense. During the intersectionality lecture, we take a mid-session break to keep things lively, but yeah, it's quite intensive for the students. During the session dedicated to intersectionality, called right now Intersectional Oppression, Language and Power, I first introduced concepts, and then we delve into understanding how power impacts not just animals, but also marginalized human groups. And we explore then together how these power dynamics are interconnected with some prompts for them to reflect and debate. And as we near the end of our session, we take a look to the role of language. And my goal here isn't to become language police on a micro level, but rather to understand how language operates on a broader societal scale. And we aim to detect the ways in which language can contribute to the perpetuation of various forms of oppression. But from next year, I think I want to talk less about language and then include instead more contents on discrimination in vegan activism, which I already touched upon briefly on things like the leaky pipeline and white male centrism, but I think it could be interesting to add a little bit more on that. So this is not for you to answer right now. This is just an example of how I kickstart the class with some questions for the students. And it's important to note that our students come with a range that is very wide range of backgrounds when it comes to intersectionality. So some students already have a strong interest in intersectionality. Others have heard the term, but might not have a clear understanding. And there are also many students who are completely new to the concept, having never encountered it before. So this diversity of knowledge and experience sets the stage for a dynamic and inclusive learning environment. And my aim is to have the class as a safe space, but also as a brave space to share. And now comes a question for you. What authors would you say are key when teaching intersectionality? What authors would you introduce to students like ours? And while you answer this, I will go on. In our class, after we have introduced important concepts like power and oppression, we explore the works of very influential authors, such, of course, Kimberly Crenshaw, Carol J. Adams, Joan Dunager, Afko, Silko, and more. And the first author that we focus on is Kimberly Crenshaw as coiner of the term. And I believe it's vital for students to become familiar with her work and hear her own perspective on it. And I think it's particularly positive to actually have the students see her explain her theory, also because I also struggle with appropriation issues too. So to make the students meet virtually the author, I share her 2016 TED Talk video with the class, which actually they appreciate quite a lot, and some quite debate comes after this video. Yeah, and now a question for you. Do you also explain or think that it should be explained other perspectives that try to explain how different operations relate? Do you think it's important to share other kinds of theories? And in my opinion, I think it's important to show different perspectives, especially when it is a course in critical animal studies. So we talk about the CAS principles and how some of them are linked to the relation between different oppressions. And we also introduce different concepts by Carol J. Adams and other ecofeminists, and the link between animal and woman exploitation. We comment on images on the sexual politics of meat, and we talk about Adams's theories on the absent referent and the feminized proteins and some more. I also introduced the concepts of total liberation and collective liberation as introduced by Steve Best and many other scholars. And I also add some critique or self-critique as in how the concept of intersectionality has sometimes been co-opted by white European university scholars who focus more on other elements than race, and also taking out the activist engagement component. And we debate on appropriation of certain terms as well. And we also get familiar with the theories by the co-sisters. I have also been introducing AFCO's critiques of intersectionality, particularly from her book, Racism as Zoological Witchcraft, which she defines as non-intersectional. And as you may know, in this book, AFCO presents a unique perspective. She argues that intersectionality theory, while valuable, may not be the most effective framework for analyzing complex oppressions. AFCO's theory suggests that systems of oppression are not merely connected, but are actually composed of one another. And she's particularly interested in exploring how our socio-historical understanding of animals shapes our understanding of racism itself. I really recommend its lecture. At the same time, for me, it's important to make the students understand that there are many different theories, terms, and they will likely continue shifting probably as there are varied connotations that are attached to them over time. And however, it is good to know where the intersectionality terms come from and try to be kind of responsible about it. During the lecture, I provide with lots of opportunities for the students to engage and develop their ideas. And so far, this lecture has been well appreciated. We have observed that plenty of students try to make their final papers on something related to intersectionality, which has been interesting. And yeah, now I would like to thank you for your attention. If you are someone who also teaches intersectionality in CAS contexts, I would like to connect with you. I put a last question there in the presentation in Mentimeter. I would be also super interested in conducting interviews to gather insights if you are also teaching intersectionality in CAS contexts. Yeah, and please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much for your attention today. Here I display some ways of connecting with me. Yeah, thank you very much.